Good afternoon. My name is Kayla Peters. I am the Outreach and Event Coordinator for the Kensington Falls Church. On behalf of Kensington Senior Living, we thank you for sharing your time with us this afternoon. The Kensington Falls Church is an assisted living and memory care community located in the heart of Falls Church, Virginia. Our enhanced programs enable us to deliver care beyond what a traditional senior living community can deliver. We look forward to listening to your needs. Let us review a few housekeeping rules for this afternoon. We are using Zoom webinar format, so your videos and microphones will be off. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A feature or the chat feature to submit them, which we will present to our speaker during the Q&A portion of the event. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. We are fortunate to be joined by Kevin Shakin, licensed insurance agent with Medicare Portal. Kevin focuses on the education and enrollment of individuals into Medicare. Inspired by his own family members' frustrating experience with Medicare, Kevin committed himself to helping others avoid the stress and costly mistakes that can be experienced when navigating Medicare alone. Compassionate in his approach, Kevin takes time to understand a beneficiary's health and financial needs to ensure a smooth transition into Medicare, where the goal is to help find coverage that is both comprehensive and cost-effective. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Shakin.
You lost me there for a minute, didn't you? Just had to reset the camera. Well, thank you so much, Kayla. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be back. It's the second time I got to do this over Zoom, and did a live one, of course, for another location earlier this year. So you guys have been great partners. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and bringing this information to the community. So thank you so much. Always hear great things about all the Kensington locations. I have several clients or their parents or family or our residents, and always positive things are said. So thank you. I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can figure this out. Should be a whiz at this by now. How does that look? Are we good? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep, we are good to go.
All right, very good. Well, folks, today, thank you so much for joining us. I will promise to move, relatively, I wouldn't say fast or quickly, but efficiently. We don't want to bore you too much. It's late in the day. Medicare is certainly not something that I think you want to spend the rest of your evening listening to or learning about, but definitely want to cover some important things with you here. Specifically, we're doing it this time of year to discuss the Medicare annual enrollment period, which is upon us here in just a few short weeks. So we're going to cover some things about what you need to know, whether it's you that's already on Medicare, you're approaching Medicare age, or perhaps you have a family member who is on Medicare and you need some help understanding what's coming. So I want to have a little bit of fun here at first, just to enjoy ourselves. So here are the things that you're told during the annual enrollment period. And I know we don't have a crowd here where I can poll you for answers or raising your hand, but just think about this if you've heard any of these things, on television or radio or through the mail or anything like that. So now's the time to make a change, and you have to make a change. You qualify for plans. Number two, you qualify for plans that will cost you $0 and pay back part of your Part B premium, maybe all of it. And number three, another common thing you're told is you can get thousands and thousands of dollars worth of free medical supplies and groceries. So who is telling you that? Of course, it's our Medicare annual enrollment mascot. So again, if you've seen any of these people on TV, this is what they're known for at this point. They are pushing these types of plans through Medicare. And it's not to say that these plans are necessarily bad. It's at the end of the day, it's how they're communicated and the promises that are ultimately made. So here's what you really should think about and know when you're talking about Medicare annual enrollment period. Okay, so one is you don't have to make a change during annual enrollment. That's not a requirement. It's not a time to say, well, I have to do something now or else I'm going to miss out next year. And number two, if it sounds too good to be true, like most things in life, then it probably is. And who tells you that? Your Medicare insurance partners, myself, Kevin Shakin, and Medicare Portal, the agency that I'm with here. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, again, we're gonna tell you kind of how it is. So officially welcome, and little bit about myself and Medicare Portal. So Medicare Portal, we are a local agency based in Tyson's Corner. Now you'll see on a map here momentarily that we have a pretty broad footprint across the country, but obviously we are, this is a local partnership and community, and we are based out of this area. And we are an independent Medicare insurance agency that provides no-cost education, enrollment, and lifetime support to current and future Medicare beneficiaries. So you never pay us a dime for any of our services. You'll never pay extra for your insurance working through us. And we really do start with education first. That is really what we feel separates us from the pack, is that it's about education, because Medicare is in itself so confusing. We are independent, we are independent as well. So we don't work for the insurance companies. We work for the clients, the members, to help you identify the plans and the coverage that ultimately best suits your needs, rather than making you fit something that is not necessarily your best bet or in your best interest. So as I mentioned, this map, this is our current footprint, and I myself am licensed in most of these states as well. Of course, if you have anybody, family, friends across the country who need similar help, and they're in these states, or even the ones in gray, we are expanding, but we have a pretty broad footprint that's ever growing. Especially over these next 8 years, we have, those the largest amount of people turning 65 than there ever will be here in the United States. So a little bit about myself. So my family there is pictured on the left, and my wife, my 3 children, my 2 boys and our daughter, and our 2 dogs, Sushi and Coco. And we are, of course, as I mentioned, we're all local, so we're based here as well. And that's my priority every day I go to work. So I love what I do, helping people and building a business, but that's all at the end of the day for those folks right there in that picture. Now, I've been doing this in the Medicare space since 2019. So we're in year, I guess that's year 4 now. And still always learning, but we have come quite a long ways in 4 years. And our company in general has been around for a few extra years. We have decades of insurance experience here within Medicare Portal to offer these services to you. And just there on the right, this is just something, I'm not on TikTok dancing necessarily. These are actually educational videos. So if you do ever want to just have access to some videos on demand, they're all quick, about a minute, about certain topics related to Medicare, please feel free to go ahead and follow or just take a look at the Medicare Mastermind. Again, just free educational information for you at your fingertips. So what are we going to cover today? Today, we're going to talk about what is the annual enrollment period, who's eligible, what changes or what can change in your benefits, where can you find these changes, what changes are you able to make if you're actually going to make a change, what changes are ahead in Medicare for 2023, and then finally how we can help, which we've explained a little bit, but we'll talk in a little further detail about that. So without further ado, I'll jump right into it. What is the annual enrollment period? AEP, as we call it, is a set time of year. Okay, this is where enrollees who are already on Medicare can evaluate and change their Medicare coverage. We'll talk about those changes. This is not necessarily for those of you who are turning 65, okay, or who are retiring after 65. You don't need to worry about the Medicare annual enrollment period at this point in time if you're not already on Medicare. It may have a slight impact on you depending on how your enrollment periods overlap or line up, but at the end of the day, this is really for current Medicare beneficiaries. So this enrollment period begins October 15th. Now there's a date in here that it's not pictured, but I'll mention it. October 1st, okay, is when I like to think that annual enrollment really begins. Now, not in the sense that you can make any changes at that point, but that's when 2023 plans are released for public consumption. And we can actually sit down and start looking at what's available for next year. It isn't until the 15th that the enrollment period begins, and we can actually start helping with the enrollments and the applications. Now that's going to run from the 15th to December 7th, at which point it ends. And your last change that you make during the enrollment period by the 7th is going to be what goes into effect ultimately on January 1st. So who is eligible for annual enrollment? Now, as I mentioned, this is current Medicare beneficiaries, right? Now, you may be anywhere in the Medicare, alphabet soup, so to speak, in terms of the parts that you have. So maybe you have just A and B. Okay, maybe you have just B, or maybe you have A, B, and D, or you have A, B, and C, which may include D, right? So pretty much anywhere you are, anywhere you fall in the Medicare picture, as long as you're on Medicare, you're going to have some opportunity to make changes, additions, subtractions, or just, like for likes type of change. And so what can change in your benefits? And this is a big one because this is what you should be looking out for every year, okay? Oops, excuse me. So the annual changes that you're going to typically find at this time of year, not so much the first one. Now, Medicare Parts A and B, there are going to be changes, right? Every year, we may see changes in benefits, but certainly premiums. And if you're on Medicare already, you're close to it, or you're just aware, you are already aware of the relatively drastic increase we saw here in 2022, right? It was a 15% increase on the Part B premium, as well as the Part B deductible. We're used to, I'm not expecting those costs to necessarily go down, but that was the largest increase in quite some time. We expect to hopefully see that be offset a little bit this year, or next year rather, but we won't know those numbers quite yet until later in the year. Now, the annual changes during annual enrollment will include to your Part C and D. So that's Part C is Medicare Advantage. We're not going to dive into all the differences between Advantage and Supplement and the different drug coverages today, or any plan specifics, but just for those that don't know, Medicare Part C is Medicare Advantage. So that's basically A plus B plus D. And then those plans in the Part D drug plans can change. And again, that can be many things, pretty much anything about those plans. So benefits, premiums, co-payments, deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums. That allowable maximum is certainly going to go up here in 2023 from what Medicare allows. Formularies, which are the drug lists, that's that the plan covers. Those definitely can change year to year, as well as the drug tiers and the co-pays on those drug plans. And then plan networks and providers and service areas. So pharmacies, doctors, hospitals, just the general geographic area of service, right? All these things can change. So it's really important, especially on Part D is probably the one thing, if you had to look at anything you have to address during annual enrollment, that you would want to review and address as Part D, because there are actually additional benefit enrollment timelines for Part C that we can talk about or answer questions on. We're not here to talk about that today, but for Part D, this is kind of the only time of year where you can adjust your prescription drug benefits. So where can you ultimately find these changes, right? So the famous ANOC, okay, that's what we call it, the annual notice of change. This is a notice that you receive in September. So you may have received it already, or if not, be on the lookout for it, because you will receive this. If you don't, you need to contact your plan or your agent. But your C and or D plan is going to send this to you in September. This notice will summarize all the changes in coverage and costs that become effective on January of the following year. I had an example, for instance, very close to home, where my mom was on one Part D plan, and she had a specialty an eye drop, and we got a letter or a notice in the ANOC that said this drug is no longer covered for next year, right? We had to make a change. Those are the types of things you need to be on the lookout for. Otherwise, you're going to let it renew, and you're going to go in to next year, and you may not have coverage. It'll be covered differently. Now, you may not have to make a change. Those changes sometimes can be very minimal, right? It might just be a slight change in premium or co-payments here and there, but it could be a drastic change, like a drug's off the formulary. Or we had last year a couple of plans where the premiums actually went up quite a lot, like 3 times the amount. So for most people, that just didn't make sense to keep. So go ahead and keep that. So you're going to go ahead and look for that here in September, and again, those changes will take place in January. So what changes ultimately can you make? Trying to move this bar here. I apologize if it's in the way. There we go. Okay. So the 6 benefit changes that you can make during the annual enrollment period. So you can make like for like, or there are additions and subtractions, as I mentioned earlier. So you can go from Medicare Advantage Part C to another Medicare Advantage plan Part C. Now, just be aware, and again, we're not here to talk about this particular enrollment period today, but while we're on the subject of Medicare Advantage and you may have questions, there's also a Medicare Advantage open enrollment period. Okay, that's actually takes place from January 1st to March 31st, where you can also change from one Medicare Advantage plan to another, or drop Medicare Advantage back to original Medicare. Okay, so again, that's why I say you hear all these ads. You don't necessarily have to make a change. This isn't always the time of year to do that. The difference is you can make as many changes as you want during annual enrollment, with the last one going into effect. And that first quarter enrollment period for those Medicare Advantage enrollees is a one-time change. Once you make it, you've utilized that enrollment period. Okay. Now, the second thing there is important, because this is the only time of year you can do it, is original Medicare to Medicare Advantage. If you are on original Medicare, let's say you have parts A and B, or A, B, and D, or A, B, and D with a supplement, okay, any of those situations, and you want to go to Medicare Advantage, now's the time to do that during annual enrollment. On the other hand, number 3, you can drop Medicare Advantage, go back to original Medicare, pick up a prescription plan. Okay, that Medicare Advantage plan will be dropped, the prescription plan will replace it. However, understand if you use number 3, that does not entitle you to a guaranteed enrollment into a Medigap or Medicare supplement plan. A lot of people will get confused or just misunderstand the fact that, oh, well, it's annual enrollment. I can switch from Medicare Advantage to Medigap and back from Medigap to Medicare Advantage and do this all the time. Well, depending on your situation, and for most people, it's going to be not a guaranteed issue scenario. If you try to use number 3, you're going to have to go through underwriting to your supplement. So don't just assume that you have that option. You can always go back to original Medicare with the Medigap plan to pick up all those costs that Medicare is not going to cover. That's not a guarantee here, and that's not a part of annual enrollment. Number 4, Part D to Part D. So like for like, you're going from a drug plan to another drug plan. All right, and that's a very common thing. And like I said earlier, a lot of times what we're doing during annual enrollment is shopping prescription drug benefits, okay, because Part D is the one that this is the time of year to make changes. Okay, you can also enroll into Part D, so you can go from original Medicare with no prescription coverage into a Part D plan, and you can also just drop it. So maybe you have Medicare and you drop Part D. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe you became eligible somehow, some way for veterans benefits, or you accidentally enrolled in Part D and you needed to drop it, whatever the case may be. You have to be careful with what you drop when it's Part D, because you don't want to have then penalties that are starting to add up. But ultimately, you could also opt out of Part D. So upcoming changes for 2023. All right, now this slide is not all that telling. I'll talk about a little bit what we're kind of hearing, but there's only a couple things that have been announced so far, and that would be the Part D prescription drug deductible. All right, because those plans are going to be coming out in October. We won't actually know the other information until probably November, December. So the drug information is typically available earlier. It's always available earlier. Medicare Part D, so the deductible is $480 this year. It's going to go up to $505 next year. That does not mean that your plan deductible is $505. It doesn't mean that every plan is $505. It could be $0, it could be $250, $310, $505, right? Depends on the plan. Typically what we see is the higher the cost of the premium, then the lower the deductible potentially. And then the Part D average premium is technically going down. So the average this year is $33. Next year it's $31.50. So at the end of the day, does that impact your Part D premium? We'll see. We don't know, right? We'll see what your drug plan is and what the changes are to that particular drug plan. That would, however, affect people if you have a Part D late enrollment penalty, because you're paying on a percentage of the national premium average. Okay. Now, the Medicare Part B base premium went up 15% last year, as I mentioned. So it went from about $148.50 now to $170, and the deductible went from $203 to $233. We're not sure exactly where that's going to wind up this year. Coming up, but there have been conversations and speculation that it may kind of stay the same, or it may even decrease a little bit. Please don't take that as not gospel by any means. That's just kind of the rumblings that we've heard. IRMA is what affects you with your income. Those thresholds, again, will be likely changing, but we'll find out all this stuff, like I said, in about November timeframe. The Part C average premium is $19, although many plans actually are $0. So we'll just stay tuned. And again, in October, that's the time when we can actually see some of the details, especially on Part C, what the premiums are going to be. So how do we help through all this? And then we do have some questions. And go ahead and answer those here momentarily, and then anybody else that wants to throw in some questions, please feel free to do so. We have the Q&A and the chat feature, which certainly more than happy to take on your questions. So how can Medicare Portal help? We're going to help you explain changes noted in your annual notice of change. Okay, so you're going to get that document, and it may not be clear to you. Okay, what am I looking at? What has actually significantly changed for me? Right? Sometimes it's obvious, like I told you the example earlier. The drug is off the formulary. Right? They notice that there's a drug that she was taking, and they notified her that it's off. It may not always be that obvious. So we can help to help you understand the changes. The big thing we do is conduct no-cost reviews. Again, that's for clients and non-clients alike, right? Obviously, ultimately, we hope to work with you long-term, you or your loved ones. So we'll do a no-cost review for you of your current coverage. Again, in annual enrollment, that's parts C and D. Confirm your current providers remain in the network, right? Or if you are looking at a different plan, that they're in the network that you're looking at. If you're going to change potentially insurance carriers, right? So we want to check all that. This is not just like, oh, there's a PPO available for you, we'll just put you in it and hope for the best. Yeah, you might have flexibility to see your doctor because they take Medicare, but in PPO, you're still paying more if they're out of network. So we want to make sure that we do all that diligence there so you know exactly what you're getting into. And if you do have out of network doctors, that you are aware of what you're paying if you go to see them. Where applicable, we'll present plan options. So really, if we sit down and do a review and all this stuff, we will be happy to present additional options to you if that makes sense. Maybe we'll just find out that your current option is 100% the best for you. And then ultimately, what we do for all of our clients is to ensure that whatever you end up doing, that we are helping you with, it meets your financial and your medical needs, right? At the end of the day, this is your insurance. It's important that it fits your needs and your wants from a budget standpoint, from a monthly cost, and from an out-of-pocket, exposure standpoint, what you can afford to pay should you have to use these benefits, and if you have exposure out of pocket. All these things. And your drug coverage, we want to make sure that if you're taking certain prescriptions, we meet your medical needs on the drugs. The pharmacy, as I mentioned, the doctors, understanding what your concerns are, maybe your family health history, and things that we want to take into account in case it's something that you may be worried about, or at least things that we want to take into consideration for your coverage. So one more thing is a resource here. Feel free, I'm going to leave this slide up for a couple minutes. You can scan this QR code. I wrote this book, Medicare Breakdown. Not the most exciting bit of reading, I admit, but it is a good resource, I think. So people tend to like keeping that on their phone or their iPad or computer. As just a quick reference, we update it every year. So numbers for 2023 will be released, later this year for 2023 edition. But go ahead and feel free to scan that QR code to get a copy of that. If you can't figure it out, if you don't have your phone on you, my contact will be up here at the end. You can also email me. I'll be happy to send you a copy. So while that's up there, and then I'll go to the next couple of slides, which I don't think are anything more than Q&A and my contact, but I will answer a couple of questions here. So, all right, we have one question. How does Medicare Advantage differ from original Medicare? So that's a great question. Okay, so original Medicare is parts A and B. Okay, and that what original Medicare provides to you is that hospital and medical coverage provided through the government. Okay, it's going to give you open access. There are no networks in original Medicare, no HMO, no PPO, no POS, no nothing. It's fee for service, and if the doctor takes Medicare, you'll be able to see them. I guess on the downside is it doesn't cover things like dental, vision, and hearing. It doesn't have an out-of-pocket maximum, so you have deductibles in the hospital of over $1,500. Co-pays in skilled nursing of the hospital for long-term stays can be upwards of $200, $400, $800 a day, depending on where you are in the benefit period. 20% co-insurance on Part B with no limit. Okay, it's 20% of emergency room, chemo, et cetera, right? So ultimately with a Medicare original Medicare, we always typically recommend a Medicare supplement because that's going to be a secondary payer. Lets you, preserve the open access part to have no network, but then it will cover a lot of those out-of-pocket costs. So you're not, exposed to limitless costs. Okay. Also with original Medicare, if you have original Medicare, your Part D coverage is going to be a separate plan. Now those are part of original Medicare, but they are offered all through private insurance companies. Now, Medicare Advantage, this is privately managed Medicare. These are managed care organizations. They are more similar to what we're used to when we have employer coverage, right? It's an HMO or a PPO, right? An HMO is a truly network-based plan where you really can only see the doctors and care and providers in the network, with the exception of emergencies. And if you go out of the network, then you're pretty much on your own, paying out of pocket. PPO will give you more flexibility. You can see doctors who take Medicare, but again, you will pay more typically when you go out of network for most services on a PPO. So that's why we always check doctors. Another difference is ultimately in the cost. So if you're on original Medicare and you get a supplement versus a Medicare Advantage plan. So on original Medicare, the supplement, you're usually going to pay more upfront in premium to reduce your overall exposure. On the back end with Medicare Advantage, is typically lower cost up front, and it's a pay-as-you-go model. So your exposure on the back end could be higher. It all depends where you live, what the plans are available to you. That's not a universal blanket statement, but that's pretty close. And then Medicare Advantage, again, they're managed care plans. These plans are, they are invested in your health. They want to keep you healthy ultimately, right? That's less claims. So they offer a lot of preventive benefits, additional benefits that Medicare does not cover, like dental, vision, hearing may be included in many. Sometimes they'll include gym memberships. So they're kind of, they're all in one plans, pay as you go, and they're a little bit more benefit rich. So hopefully that answers your question. The other question I got here, will the PowerPoint be available to us following the presentation? I need to check on that.
Yes, so the presentation will be available to you all. This is recorded, so once this presentation is over and the recording is available, you will all get an email with the presentation link, which will also be on our website. You could find it on our website as well. So everybody will get a copy of the recording.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I saw another question come through. Does Medicare, any parts, pay for any expenses for someone's stay at the Kensington? So I can answer that for you.
Go ahead.
So for the Kensington, we are private pay, and we do take long-term care insurance. The one part of the Kensington that Medicare will come into play is our on-site rehab. So Genesis does take Medicare. So otherwise, the Kensington itself is private pay as well as long-term care insurance.
Good answer.
All right.
I just put my contact. I was trying to get that slide to work there, Kayla. So if anybody has questions, again, our services, like I mentioned, are completely free. There's no cost or obligation here. So feel free to utilize us as you see fit. If you might even have a question. There are plenty of people in this area that we just, we are unable to help on the insurance side. But at the end of the day, this is about, servicing the community. The seniors on Medicare are bombarded constantly with, unfortunately, bad information a lot of the time, and just complete kind of overwhelm, right? And it causes a lot of confusion. So if we can cut through that at all and help you out, answer a simple question for you, certainly more than happy to do that. You can contact me there by phone, email, Facebook, whatever works best for you, but certainly feel free. Now, I do have another question here. I guess I'll address. So do you help with regular insurance or just Medicare? I guess you mean like home and auto or life or under 65 health. It depends on what exactly the insurance is you're looking at. Feel free to reach out to me. And if I help with it, I'll help you. If not, I can certainly point you in the right direction of someone who would be better suited to do that.
Okay, and we'll wait a few minutes for any other questions. Please feel free to submit them in the Q&A or the chat feature if you have them. But I do just want to take this moment to thank you, Kevin, for speaking for us today. We truly appreciate it and working with you. So, and I want to thank everyone here today who joined us as well. Again, you will all get a copy of the recording. So Kevin, I guess we can just leave this slide up just for a few minutes so everyone could take down your information or anything like that.
Sure.
But otherwise, thank you. And thank you all again for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, Kayla, thanks for having me. And thank you everyone for attending. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep. And if you need help, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much. We ended quite a bit early, so I think everyone will appreciate that.
Good.